Hey everyone, Chelsea here from So Simple Home. Today's project is a fun holiday embroidery project. Now, if you've been with us for the last year or so, we have been updating and establishing a really nice hand embroidery series where we teach you all the different hand embroidery stitches, and then we have lots of projects that you can choose from so you can start embroidering by hand. Um, a lot of beginner sewists aren't ready to do a sewing machine, or they don't have a sewing machine but they want to sew something, and so embroidery is a fun way to do that. So this project goes right along with all of that fun embroidery, and if you're interested in some of that information, we'll leave it down in the description so you can go check it all out. But today's project, we are making this fun signature ornament for the holiday season. So we're using an embroidery hoop, and then we are stitching on someone's signature. So this is my son's signature from earlier in this year. And I had him write it down on a piece of paper, and I was able to stitch it out onto this ornament. This is just such a fun way to preserve some of those memories. So perhaps it's a grandmother that's passed away, or a good friend or a family member that you want to preserve their signature for the future. This is a fun and great little keepsake that you can give to people. So let's talk supplies. You don't need a ton of stuff, but there are some supplies that you might need to purchase. First off, an embroidery hoop. These embroidery hoops, I purchased a whole pack of them. These are 4-inch embroidery hoops. I got them on Amazon, and I think it was like a 10 pack. I could have been 8, I can't remember. And I used them last year to make 3 or 4 of these embroidery signature ornaments. And so this year now I'm doing my son and my daughter's signature. So you'll need some embroidery hoops. You can get them bigger or smaller, just depends on how big you want that signature and how big you want that ornament. Next, fabric. Now your fabric, you don't need a ton. You just need kind of a rectangle or square piece. I'm gonna press this one while we're talking about it. I am using a neutral color. It does have some flecks of darker brown in it, but I'm using a neutral color. You could for sure do a colored background, a green, a red, or whatever, a blue. Just make sure that whatever you're using, you can see your stitching for your signature. So a solid color is probably your best choice. Next, you're going to need the person's signature. So this is my daughter's signature. It's kind of crazy, but I kind of love that about it. And then you are going to need some type of material where you can transfer the signature to your embroidery project. So these are the 2 suggestions I have. Both are from Sulky. This is sticky Fabrisolve. This is actually printable water-soluble material. So you get a sheet like this, and you can actually put it into your printer and print out the design, and then it peels off the paper and you can stick it right onto your fabric for embroidery. This works whether you have a printer or not. But if you do have, let's say you have the signatures and you doctored them up and you made them look really nice, you can print them onto this material. The other one here is Stitch and Stick, which is very similar. It is paper that you can print on as well, but you're gonna just peel it off and stick it onto your fabric. Both of these work. Both of them will give you similar, if not the same results, but it just depends on where you are as to what you might be able to find. Now I just have a small sheet left over from other projects that I'm going to use for this project for the signature. You'll also need some type of pen to write onto your material. I highly suggest the Frixion pens or markers because they are heat soluble, and so when you write it onto your material here, you'll be able to see it and use it, but as soon as you put the iron on it, it'll disappear, and so it won't bleed onto your fabric, which is what you don't want. You don't want that marker to bleed when you use the water to remove the sticky solvay. All right, lastly, you're going to need some hand embroidery thread. You want a 12 weight at least of embroidery thread. I like the cotton petites from Sulky. I like to buy them in a pack so that I have a bunch of different colors. This one is kind of Christmas colors. There's some reds somewhere floating around. But I'm going to use this kind of variegated green. I think it's really pretty. And it's different from this one. So they'll have their own unique little twist. And of course, to embroider, you'll need a hand embroidery needle. So those are pretty much the supplies that you're going to need for this project. And of course, scissors. So let's go ahead and get started. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to transfer my signature onto my sticky solvy here. And I am actually just going to literally trace it with this marker. Now for her signature, you could actually have the person actually write their signature onto the sticky as well if you wanted. And then that would save you a step. But one of the things with kids is especially hard is to get them to do a nice job. The other thing you can do too is if they wrote their name on a paper, like on some schoolwork, you can take that from their schoolwork. You know, you can be kind of sneaky so they don't know what's actually happening. So this is my daughter Alice's name. This is actually from several years ago, but I just love how cute it is. And so I wanted to preserve this cute signature of hers. It has changed a little bit. It's not quite as crazy, but it's still very cute. All right, so now let's get our project on our embroidery hoop. Now you'll notice here that my fabric is much larger than my embroidery hoop. I like to leave at least about 1.5 inches to 2 inches all the way around. And I just do it as a square or a rectangle. It doesn't have to be perfect, but I like to leave just a little bit so that we have some space to work with. And when we finish it, that gives us room to cut around and stitch the back the way we need to kind of finish it off. All right, so that's kind of what it looks like. And now all I'm going to do is I'm actually going to cut this little piece here. Take her signature and place it where I want on my embroidery hoop. Wherever I want it. And now I'm going to put the date down here. And this is from a couple of years ago. I'm going to cut this extra just so it's out of the way. So I'm actually going to put that year. So this is from 2022. So this is a 3-year-old signature, but I want it to be accurate. Now, the other thing you could put is you could put their age on there, age 7 or age whatever. But this just helps me know when that signature is from. So this one was from my son earlier this year. And then this one is from my daughter several years ago. All right, we are ready to embroider. So you just see these just stick right onto the material. They don't come off. They'll stay there as you're moving. It's very, very nice. So now we're going to take our thread and I'm going to do 2 strands. Now, if you don't have embroidery thread or embroidery floss that comes on a spool, you can buy embroidery floss in packages. And they have, 6 to 8 strands on one. And you most definitely can use that. Again, you're just going to use 2 layers, 2 strands. So I am actually going to use a back stitch on this project. So let me get you a little closer. To start, this is the end of her name. I'm going to start just a little bit above that, and I'm going to leave a tail of a couple of inches on the back. I'm not even doing a knot. But I started above her name, or above her A, the end of her A, and I'm just gonna stitch backwards. You see that? And then I'm gonna come up a little farther, and I'm going to make sure I catch this tail in the loop on the back side. And when I pull on the front side, it'll catch that tail and it kind of makes its own little knot. Now, because it's a back stitch, I'm going to go back and go through the bottom, or I guess the top of this previous stitch, and pull. So now I have those 2 stitches there. See how that works? And then I'm just going to continue to stitch. I'm up close here. So I go up a little ways. I don't want to go too far up. Getting some thread stuck in the back there. And then down. And then I come up a little bit and go back down that previous hole until I get all the way across this line. Now, if you make the stitches too big, then they can look a little wonky. So you can kind of see here, I'm going off course just slightly. So I'm going to make my stitches, start making them a little bit shorter. But you can kind of correct that as you're going. Do one more on this one. We'll have our first line done. There you go. That's the first line. Now I'm just going to start up here. If I can get right on that line. And I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to back stitch. Now, if you want to make it so you're doing it the same direction you would just turn the whole thing and then just keep going. Now, I personally don't like to overlap my threads. So when they intersect like here, I will actually jump past. So where this intersection is, I'll jump past that and put my stitching in before that so they don't overlap. But that's just me. I just don't like the bulky look it kind of gives. But that is the back stitch. Now, there are lots of other embroidery stitches that you could use on this. You could use a running stitch. You could use a split stitch. So many different stitches. It's up to you kind of the look that you want. I just really found for the cleanest signature look that this back stitch is my favorite. I've tried others and every time I've done it, I've regretted it. It just is too bulky and just doesn't look right. And so I'm going to stick with the back stitch, but you're welcome to choose a different stitch that might work for you. All right, one more stitch here, the end of her A, just like that. So you can see we've got the 2 sides of her A, and then we'll have to go across. I'm just going to continue to work on this, and we'll come back together once I've got all of my stitches done. All right, we've got our name and the date all done. So to tie it off, what I typically do is I will take my stitch underneath one of my already done stitches and create a loop, and then go through that loop twice, and then just kind of pull. And that's how I like to knot off my embroidery projects. So it's a little messy on this side, but not on this side. So that's great. All right, so the next thing we're gonna do is we are going to remove all of this extra sticky solvay. Now, I personally like to pull it up just a little bit and trim the extra before I add water because it gets really sticky and kind of gross. And that just helps alleviate some of that. That's just me though. You don't have to do that. You can just put water right on it all. That's fine. But I just like to take off just a little bit of it. I guess ultimately I could have trimmed it down from the very beginning, but I don't. So just taking off just a little bit. And then all you need is like a spray bottle. And get that wet and let it sit for a minute or two. And you'll notice once it's saturated, it's kind of starts to disappear a little. And I'm working it in with my finger, just working that water in. And then you can take like a cloth and kind of dab, and you can see how it starts pulling up the sticky. And eventually that just dissolves completely. Now I don't like to get it too wet. You can run it under water, but then it just takes a lot longer to dry. And so I just kind of work the water in and then just kind of use my fingernail to pull that solvay up. And then use a rag to get those extra bits off. So I'll run my rag over this a little. Now you don't want to ruin it, so you don't want to like scrub it, but adding just a little bit is kind of fun. All right, looks much better. And you can kind of see how our name transferred. I think it did a pretty good job there. All right, now I'm going to take it out of my embroidery hoop just for a second, just so that I can dry this and press it. All right, there is my name. A little signature. Just put it under my heat press for a little bit just to give it a little dry. And now I'm going to put it in this embroidery hoop and I'm going to make it nice and tight because I'm planning to leave it in this hoop as part of the ornament. Then I'm going to come with my scissors and I'm going to trim about 1.5 inches, 2 inches around my circle. Doesn't have to be perfect. We're just trimming it up. So it kind of looks like that. Looks a little bit silly. And I'm going to take my thread and I'm going to put a running stitch on the outside edge of this fabric. I'll just leave my tail long here. And then I'm just gonna stitch all the way around. Just, you know, skipping every 1/4 inch, 1.5 inches. Doesn't have to be anything exact. You could, I guess, technically put it in your sewing machine and do this, but I usually have a little bit of thread left over on my needle from the project. So that was what this is. It's just the leftover thread. So it just kind of makes it so I don't waste that thread. Sometimes it works out that way, sometimes it doesn't. But you can kind of just see here, I'm just going in and out, no real rhyme or reason, just in and out until I get all the way to the other side. Okay. So it kind of looks like this, a little silly, but I'm going to pull these threads tight and look at that. Now the back of my ornament is all gathered up and it looks really nice. Now I could just tie this off, or I'm actually going to thread it back onto my needle. I'm just going to come down here and pick up one of these stitches, and I'm just going to tie it off like I did the end of my project. Make a little loop, go through that loop twice and pull, and then I'll trim that thread there. So now that's kind of what the back side of my project looks like. Now you could leave it like this, but since this is going to go onto your Christmas tree, you might want to do something a little bit nicer on the back. You can get a piece of cardstock or paper, or you could even use a small piece of fabric. And I'm just gonna come around it. It's hard to do the full circle when you've got the top of the embroidery hoop there. But I'm just gonna make this circle. Make sure I use the right scissors. And I'm gonna come around. And I'm actually cutting on the inside of this circle because I want it to be slightly smaller than the actual hoop itself. I don't want it to overhang. I don't want to be able to see it, right? So like right here, it kind of overhangs a little. I don't want that. I want it to be just a little bit smaller than the hoop itself. So that should work there. And then I'm going to take my glue gun and I'm just going to add some glue all the way around and just glue that down. So that little piece of cardboard will stay. Now once you have your cardboard glued on, it's time to decorate, and there's lots of different things that you can do. And this, I have ribbon, I have these little baubles, I have jute string. So I'm still going to use a bit of jute string here, and you can kind of decide how long you need yours. I'm going to press mine just a little bit to get some of those kinks out. I'm going to, this one's a little long, we'll shorten it just a bit. I'm going to tie the end here, not that long, and then put it through. And this is going to be my loop that will hold up the ornament. There we go. So there's my little loop. Put that on the back side there. So that will be how the ornament hangs. I've got these fun little pom-poms. I got these from the dollar store. I could glue them all the way around and they could kind of hang, which would be kind of cute. But I think I'll just do matching for what we did for brother. I have this fun Christmas like snowflake, green and red snowflake ribbon. So I'm just going to take those, two of those, and tie a knot in the middle. And we'll put those there, and then I'll use the green and do kind of similar to what we did with Brother, which actually this is supposed to go through. So we'll put this through. We'll do some of the green and some of the white, so kind of in the middle here. But again, you can do what you want. You could get some greenery or some Christmas flowers. Just gonna put a little dab of glue right there. And you could do it higher, so you hide all of the embroidery stuff if you wanted. A little bit higher, that would be fine. And then I take the baubles down and kind of around to the back. So we'll clip it about right here. We'll put a little dab of glue, and if you notice, I got glitter glue. You get what you get, right? A little bit of glitter glue. And you could ultimately, if you didn't want anything you're gluing to show, you could put it underneath your board. But I'm okay. I'm not too concerned about it myself. And then we'll put a little dab of glue here, just for those two little kind of pom-pom baubles to hang off a little. And then I'm just gonna trim my ribbons just a little bit shorter, like that. And there you go. There are your little signature hand embroidered ornaments. See how simple? They're not a lot of work. They're easy to do if you're on the go. Take it with you. Work on it when you're in the car on a trip. Work on it during your lunch break, while you're watching a show. And then you can have a keepsake ornament with the signatures of your children, grandparents, special people in your life. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. Let me know if you have any comments and questions in the below. And then don't forget to look into the description. We'll have our link to our hand embroidery resources, as well as a link to the blog post detailing all of this and all of the resources that we used. We will see you in the next video.